Minister, 2 weeks ago I met my younger sister for tea across the road in the Merrion Hotel. It was a very unusual day, but not because neither of us had taken the time to have tea in the very posh Merrion Hotel. It was unusual because it was the first time we had ever shared a pot of tea. Before that day, 2 weeks ago, I had never laid eyes on my sister. Each of us was adopted from a different mother and baby home, into different families, eventually ending up living in different countries. Sitting together, we looked like sisters, but we didn't talk like sisters. Where other sisters in our age group have shared experiences and a shared family history, we have just had a very long gap in our lives. I never played childhood games with a sister. I never fought with her over toys. We never skipped together or climbed trees. She wasn't handed down my old clothes. We didn't go to school together or to discos or fight over boys. She doesn't know my children and I've never met hers. We look very alike, but so far that's the only aspect of our lives that we share. And what of our shared mother? I know from the documented experiences of many women of her era that women who bore more than one baby in a mother and baby home were frequently obliged to serve time in a Magdalen laundry. And perhaps our mother managed to avoid such a sentence by not choosing the same home twice for her confinement. The evidence is, however, that most women in her circumstances would have paid their penance by toiling for years in one of Ireland's notorious laundries. Research carried out by the Magdalen Names Project, published just last week, shows that in the year that I was born, more than 60% of the Magdalen women, that's 6 out of every 10 women, Minister, whose names were recorded as inmates in 2 Dublin laundries, were subsequently also recorded on headstones in Magdalen grave plots. These women did not leave the laundries alive. My sister and I feel lucky. We were both adopted as babies into loving families, but not everyone born in a mother and baby home was so lucky. The morning after I met my younger sister for the first time, I had the pleasure of meeting 3 beautiful, intelligent women who had spent their entire childhood and teenage years to adulthood in religious-run institutions. They were born in the 1960s. Their fathers were doctors and black. Their mothers were Irish and white. These mixed-race Irish children were not considered by the Church or the state to be appropriate candidates for adoption. Their stories of racial discrimination, physical abuse and mental abuse are truly shocking. And when I hear their stories and other stories from survivors and victims of abuse in Catholic institutions and Protestant-run institutions like the West Bank Children's Home in Greystones in my own constituency of Wicklow, I know that I have been lucky. I am also lucky in another important sense. As a member of this House, I have the freedom within this debate to add my story to the public record. Other people whose intention was to be in this room today for the debate, and I know lots of people had scheduled to come in at 4 o'clock, people with similar backgrounds to mine, who would have been barricaded behind the glass partition of the visitors' gallery, have not been offered the opportunity yet to have their voices and stories heard. Their stories and what the future Ireland can learn from them are the reason why this commission of investigation is so important. Their stories, like my story and my sister's story, demonstrates why this needs to be a broad and all-embracing inquiry. The mother and baby homes, the adoption processes, the Magdalen laundries, the private nursing homes, the county homes, the church hierarchies, the religious organisations and the state are all part of a very large jigsaw puzzle that must be looked at in its entirety. Until this is done openly, honestly and comprehensively, the gaps in the lives of families all over the country cannot begin to be filled. Minister, I made a submission on the Mother and Baby Commission to your predecessor, Minister Flanagan, and he professed a genuine interest in this subject and gave me certain commitments about his prioritisation of much-needed adoption legislation concerning both historic and modern-day adoptions. One of those commitments was to hold committee hearings into both closed and open adoption practices as part of the process, and he said that I would be invited to this because, as you know, you might probably know recently enough, I introduced my own bill on open adoption in this House. It hasn't yet been debated. There is a legitimate public concern about the recent turnover of ministers in the Department of Children and Youth Affairs. And in that context, I would welcome a commitment from you, Minister, to give the issues discussed here today your top priority. And I know you've done that. It is one of the last items on the agenda before we go into the summer recess. And I sincerely hope it's one of the first items that we come back to. And if you need any help over the summer months, Minister, and I'm really delighted to hear that you will be working on this over the summer months to make sure that you come back in September with the terms of inquiry, I will be available to give you any assistance. I'll be around all summer, Minister. Thank you.
Thanks, Deputy.